The history of COPD. Believe it or not, we can trace the history of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease back to the mid-1600s. Our knowledge of COPD began to develop with the writings of a Swiss-born physician, Theodore Bonnet, in the mid-17th century. Having performed over 3,000 autopsies on his patients, Bonnet first described the effects of the emphysema on the lungs. He noted that lungs were larger in patients with emphysema and believed that this was the cause for shortness of breath. Since COPD is the umbrella term for bronchitis and emphysema, this could be the starting point for all future research on COPD. Where does the history go from here? In 1814, British physician Charles Madham became the first to use the term bronchitis to denote inflammatory changes in the mucous membrane. This changed the way that doctors viewed a variety of medical conditions. (1821). Moving ahead to 1821, Dr. René Laennec, known as the father of chest medicine, thanks in part to his invention of the stethoscope, accurately discovered the relationship between emphysema and chronic bronchitis. Laennec became the first to connect emphysema to aging, and he was the first to define emphysema as tissue damage in the peripheral air passages. To him, emphysema was a breakdown of tissue in the parenchyma of the lungs as opposed to air trapped in the alveoli due to an obstruction such as occurs in asthma and chronic bronchitis. In 1837, Dr. William Stokes became the first person to use the term chronic bronchitis. In the past, COPD was referred to as chronic airflow obstruction and chronic obstructive lung disease. Huntington, in 1846, the very man that invented the spirometer, despite believing that this device was limited in its use, it became and still is the prominent tool used in diagnosing and treating many lung conditions. Research on the lungs would continue well into the 20th century. It was in 1959 at a gathering of medical professionals called the SIBA Guest Symposium, where they would make up a full list of components for the definition and diagnosis of COPD in the past. COPD was referred to as a chronic airflow obstruction and chronic obstructive lung disease. Dr. William Briscoe is thought to be the first person to use the term COPD at the 9th Aspen Emphysema Conference in 1965. It was also during the 1960s when the term FEV1 was first used to measure expiratory flow. This lung function test made it possible to differentiate asthma from chronic bronchitis, emphysema, and other lung diseases.